Bobby, welcome to the podcast. Bobby Shell graduated with a degree in marketing from the University of West Florida. He brings over 27 years of experience in sales and marketing and currently serves as the vice president of marketing at Voltage. Before joining Voltage, Bobby was an early employee at Marketing 360, where he served as the director of marketing and helped scale the company to a $100 million runway. He's passionate about building businesses and helping companies adopt effective Bitcoin strategies. Bobby, first and foremost, I remember your face. I think we met in Miami about 3 years ago at a Bitcoin conference. And you were telling me about Voltage. So it's really sweet to kind of see this circle, come around here. And now we're talking about Voltage.
Yeah, talking about the same things, and a lot more of the world has adopted the Lightning Network technology, so it's an exciting time.
Yeah, tell me all about what Voltage is and why it's unique.
Yeah, so Voltage, what we do is we help businesses integrate the Lightning Network. And for those who are not privy to Lightning, it's the layer two scaling solution for Bitcoin. So
Mm,
Bitcoin is slow and not necessarily practical to be everyday money. And just like the internet, how it's built in layers, so is Bitcoin in the crypto world. So Lightning is the layer two that enables instant global near zero fee payments on top of Bitcoin. And one of the big exciting innovations a lot of businesses are excited about this coming year is Tether running on top of the Lightning Network.
mm. So so yes, layer two Lightning Network, what role does Voltage specifically play in that process?
We help businesses integrate it. So we have a simple
Mm,
API, and it's software as a service essentially. Working with exchanges, neobanks, wallets. None of those businesses really want to manage the complexity of Lightning and the technology. Just kind of like hosting an email server, you would go to
mm.
Gmail. Same with Lightning, a software product API to help them integrate it.
Amazing. Help me understand something. So the common argument is that Bitcoin is digital gold. Now, trying to understand this here. So someone might wonder, like, hey, maybe there's all these amazing, layer ones out there, Ethereum, just Solana, that are designed to do speedy transactions. And maybe Bitcoin is just meant to be what it is today, just something that's a little slow, not necessarily something that's instant. What's the argument for why Bitcoin should be the solution for instant payments as well?
Yeah. So all cryptos on their layer one suffer from what is called a global shared state, meaning every economic participant needs to be up to speed with what every other economic participant's doing. And this is exactly what causes,
Mhm.
clogged transactions on Ethereum and Solana, increased costs, slow speed, and so on. And this is why you see like optimistic rollups or ZK rollups on Ethereum. But from an architecture standpoint, it's a little bit in some people's view, broken compared to Bitcoin. Have the base layer do one thing and do it incredibly well, uncensorable, decentralized money with no throat to choke, unlike
Hmm.
cryptos that have a CEO. And then, how is Bitcoin not digital gold? Well, it solved the store value component, right? But the thing that people argue, I think, and it's a good question, like, is Bitcoin just digital gold? Is there's the second layer and there's going to be third layers and so on. And with Bitcoin, we have the Lightning Network. So you open an on-chain transaction with a peer, and then you can send payments back and forth in perpetuity at near zero fees instantly with no chargeback risk. And this is what makes it attractive to businesses and why we've seen so many global exchanges, neobanks, and wallets adopt Lightning, where last year there was just over 500,000,000 users with access to the Lightning Network across all of these enterprise businesses in production, mind you. And now we have close to 1 billion. We'll be crossing 1 billion users with access to the Lightning Network. And one fun stat, I know we saw each other at the Bitcoin conference 2 or 3 years ago, but this last year at the Bitcoin conference, Cash App announced they do about 8% of all on-chain transactions, and they have 25% of all of their Bitcoin transactions happening over the Lightning Network at scale. So it's pretty exciting to start to see these now success metrics coming out, because there's obviously on X, we all have our bags to, brag about and create FUD about others. But it's great to see these technologies being used in production at scale within
Mm,
publicly traded companies, near flawlessly. And that's what Lightning delivers to the world.
very interesting. So, with all the regulations that have been pushed out this year in the United States, What kind of challenges and opportunities has Voltage faced? Have you guys seen an explosion of growth? Just really curious to know how this year has affected you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year has been pretty great for everyone. The Genius Act and having some market clarity. Compared to last year, our pipeline has grown by over 1,000%.
Wow.
So we have a fairly tight revenue organization from the marketing, sales to the customer success. And we put a pretty big focus on the customer success piece, really trying to help customers integrate it successfully. We've created a go-to-market playbook for anyone integrating Lightning to help them achieve, 25 to 50% adoption. So like Chipper Cash, one of our customers in Africa, they're an exchange. They have 50% of all Bitcoin transactions happening over Lightning. And many other customers in that 25 to 50% range, like I expressed, of Cash App and Chipper Cash. So we're seeing a ton of growth. There's been a massive acceleration of adoption of Lightning, but I would be crazy to say that's the only focus businesses have, because if we're going to be honest, stablecoins are the big 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
And I would say 80% of businesses we speak to, they're demanding Tether on top of Lightning. And you have to ask yourself why, because Tether has been across many chains. And over the last year and a half, Tether has deprecated and removed their stablecoin from 5 to 7 chains. And the question's why? Well, we already covered the layer one piece, the global shared state that makes it not scalable, these layer ones. And currently, Tether is about 40% of all crypto fees. So when you think about it, if you're Paulo and you're running this successful business, the CEO of Tether, he's thinking, how can I get those fees as close to zero as possible? And their solution, Tether, these are his words, is,
Mhm.
we need layer twos that have no global shared state. A peer-to-peer architecture like Lightning or a protocol like Lightning is what is scalable. And that's why they're bringing, Tether to RGB, Lightning, Liquid, and other Bitcoin layer twos and side chains. So it'll be interesting to see, fees start to go down. But the other interesting piece I'd say that I think everyone is kind of running into a kind of a wall is, everyone wants to launch their stablecoin. And the reason why is
Yeah.
because they have distribution. So how can we get as many people using our stablecoin? But what I believe will happen is many stablecoins will converge on top of the best form of money, which would be Bitcoin. And then next, it's other layers, the layer twos.
Interesting. Perhaps I'm not so involved in this specific niche, but what it sounds like is there's a fight for the narrative because, like, it seems like, for example, something like XRP has a very specific use case, right? And it was almost like accepted early on that Bitcoin was this slow thing, but it's the king of the industry and it's not really meant to do transactions. It's just meant to hold and and preserve and let it appreciate over time. But I think what Voltage and more specifically also the Lightning Network is saying is that, hey, this can be like a one-stop shop for transactions. It can be digital gold. It can be something you use on the day to day. And as someone who's somewhat in the industry, I find that a just it's more of a perspective on what Bitcoin should be.
Yeah, I think whenever you raise capital from VCs to like start a chain, let's think about the incentives. Everyone is incentivized to create the next Ethereum, a centralized chain with a CEO who kind of has pretty strong control over it for all intents and purposes.
Mhm.
And to recreate, the immaculate inception of a truly decentralized protocol that literally cannot be stopped, that's likely never going to happen again. So you can
Right.
imagine how much capital is going to just pour into these other blockchains, and we've seen that for the last 15 years. It's actually incredible. And I had a friend at my last company probably 7 years ago who eventually became an Ethereum developer. And whenever I was new, I said, "Why does everyone build on ETH?" And he was like, "ETH is a playground. It literally is a developer playground where people build everything that's going to land on Bitcoin 8 years down the line." And I was just like, okay, just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed new. I'm buying every crypto there is. And here we are, about 8 to 10 years later, and it's just exactly as he said. These other chains are playgrounds, and now on top of Bitcoin, we've got, the ability for taproot assets, um, which enable asset issuance on top of Lightning. And we've got all these innovations happening on the main chain and all these Bitcoin side chains. Like it's layer two season in Bitcoin, and I can't even keep up with it, man. It's crazy what's going on in
Mhm.
Bitcoin right now, but it's cool to see. And Bitcoin moves slow because it is decentralized. There's not like an organization kind of making decisions on, are we a world computer? Are we, an NFT platform? Are we this? It's just kind of consensus is hard, so things move slow, and thankfully they move slow. But yeah, it's interesting the way the industry's evolved, and
Yeah.
Bitcoin is really kind of taking shape and reaching maturity.
What are some of the current bottlenecks Voltage is facing?
I wouldn't say there's necessarily bottlenecks. We're having some pretty tremendous success with a few different verticals of business, but I would say what the world really wants and demands, like across this industry, and you see it in the headlines, like I mentioned with stablecoins, is everyone needs to either create their own stablecoin and get it
Right.
distributed into the world because they need to capitalize on that. Like we saw Western Union tapping into Solana because they don't even know the first thing about stablecoins. They're just like, how can we do this? And I saw a headline, what is it? Solana paid him maybe 50, 60 million. I didn't go validate that, but it's a smart decision. I think I'm from the Solana side to do that. But everyone's trying to figure out, stable coins as a service. How do we issue one? How do we integrate stable coins? Because that's the thing the world's really demanding. And what I believe is going to happen is, stable coins coming to Bitcoin. Like, think about businesses. They vertically integrate for efficiency, right? Like Walmart, Amazon, they want to own, the mailing service. They want to own packaging. They vertically integrate. This is like standard business 101 for anyone who's been to business college. And we're going to see the same thing for every enterprise that does hundreds of millions of dollars in volume of Bitcoin. If you have infrastructure, you're not going to want to support 200 chains in perpetuity in the future. What has the
Right.
world always done? We've converged on one form of money. It was gold, it was dollars, and what is it going to be next? From in the digital world, it's likely to be Bitcoin. So will there be layers of Bitcoin? Will there be other assets on top of Bitcoin? Likely, because that's where the volumes are. And this isn't, me pumping my
No, I mean
bags or like beliefs.
we
I think it's just rational and it's grounded in reality because this is what
yeah.
we've seen over hundreds of years. But
So,
time
so
will
I
tell.
would I would take it Bobby Shell is a little bit of a Bitcoin maximalist if I had to guess.
I'd say rationalist. I mean, I've owned a lot of assets, a lot of tokens, and I think it's one of those things, like you said, like this is a niche you haven't explored. And like when it comes to XRP, I couldn't tell anyone anything about it. I know they've sold a lot of XRP to acquire, different, brands and tools that are very successful. And I think that's smart. I think selling a token to acquire like real operational businesses is a brilliant move. But
Yeah.
yeah, a Bitcoin rationalist, I would absolutely say, just focused on decentralized money, really helping people and organizations.
Yeah, even to take a step out of the conversation for a second and talk about the market. I mean, supporting your perspective, you're seeing just the inability for altcoins to perform and this dilution of just so many altcoins entering the market, and it's not really getting much market value as opposed to Bitcoin. That's done,
That's a good
especially
point.
relatively speaking, has done very, very well. And we're all saying, hey, where's, this bull run is horrible, this bull run is horrible. When you look at Bitcoin relative to altcoin pairs, yeah, altcoins have bled 80%, but Bitcoin did kind of well this run. So, assuming, hopefully we're not done, but the point
Yeah.
here is that ultimately liquidity flows back to the king, and sometimes we forget who's in charge, but we're eventually reminded that Bitcoin is still by far the leader in this industry. And when I said what kind of bottlenecks did Voltage have, I didn't mean specifically Voltage. I meant like in terms of like upwards momentum given the context of the industry. So if you were to take
Yeah.
a look into like 5 years from now, how do you see all that? I know it's almost like a meaningless question because there are so many chaotic variables at play, but how do you see the Bitcoin industry and how do you see just Voltage in 5 years from now?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good pragmatic question because the one thing I've learned, kind of learning, studying, whatever you want to call it, of like Bitcoin and crypto the last 7 to 8 years is the people who are in the industry are obsessive over it. And the thing I've learned in the last 4 years of working at a B2B software company is that our industry heavily lacks go to market expertise. Like people who know how to bring technology to the world and express the value it brings and how it solves specific problems. Like if your company doesn't have that, you're going to flail. And it's just amazing, like meeting different brands and just these folks at conferences. I'm kind of blown away at how many brands lack this. And at Voltage, I really believe we've solved this problem because over the last year, like our pipeline has grown by over 1,000%. But it's
That's
just
crazy, by the way.
amazing. Yeah, I mean, but the thing that's crazy is this, I think, impacts every business. This is why 75% of, small businesses fail, and was it like 90+% of startups? But we need go-to-market experts in the industry. This isn't just Bitcoin or Lightning. I'm literally saying like the entire industry. And we're starting to see, especially with market clarity, people from other industries and other verticals of business with incredibly successful careers come into our industry. And that's exactly what we need to bring it to the rest of the world. We need more pragmatic, grounded thinkers who know how to bring new technology to market and speak in the way that these buyers are thinking and with the problems they have.
Right. Just trying to understand something here. How long does it take for a transaction to execute on the Lightning Network?
Um, it can take less than a second. The times where it goes slower is if it has to go through multiple peers. And this
Mm,
is why in the last year or two, we've seen Lightning become more efficient. Like we said last year, there was around 600 million people with access. Now there's over 900 million. And what does this mean? Well, it means there's been more enterprises that are having access to it because these aren't people running nodes at home,
right.
like there's a very small subset of people who do that. And people who do that typically have challenges because you have to manage that complexity. Businesses abstract that for users like Cash App. So the more businesses that integrate it, the faster and more efficient it becomes. Just
Right.
like other technology, there's the network effect. Anyone who's heard of that? And it's had its breakout year and its network effect moment where we're seeing over 95% of payments for our customers settling in less than a second.
Very cool. So I'm trying to figure something out here. How long has the Lightning Network been active for?
Gosh, 2017 or 18. I'd have to quickly look.
2017, 18. I see.
Yeah, but it was right,
Now,
really 19 is when it started
oh,
taking off, and there was like
right,
it's called plebnet, like community really started
right.
working on it.
So I'm trying to figure something out here because, uh, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me it sounds like a lot of the incentive for Ethereum to exist, in the early days was because Bitcoin was really slow. Was it other stuff? But it seemed like the main issue was just doing instant transaction on Bitcoin was a problem. Assuming that's been somewhat solved, what is the incentive for such a wide degree of competition, given that Bitcoin is truly decentralized, a second, a half a second, a tenth of a second? At some point, it doesn't really matter how fast it is. If you're waiting 1 second, that seems pretty good enough, especially
Yeah.
compared to how the world runs today with, paying with credit card. It takes
So
more than a
2
second.
questions, yeah. So people want smart contracts with Ethereum, like the world wants
Correct.
real world assets, like that's hugely in demand. But is that like the big problem the world is facing? I would argue not. Is it interesting? Oh yeah, absolutely. We love trading. Then the funny thing is the investors who make the most money either die or forget their password. So like, do we really need people hyper trading things? I don't know. Data kind of lends itself to no, but it's a great way to extract money from people. So if I was BlackRock or some big company, I would be eating that up day and night. But you do raise a good point. Like, if it's a second, is it fast enough? For people, it is. For machines, is that fast enough? And the answer is no. Over
Mm,
80% of the internet are APIs interacting with one another.
right.
And,
Mm.
it needs money that pays faster than a second. It needs millisecond payments. And how will that be done at scale? To be determined, but there's a theory that Lightning might be able to deliver that. And we're beginning to see, flashes of that happening.
Very cool. Bobby, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I'm on X. The handle is Bobby Shell. Also on LinkedIn, just Bobby Shell, and our company Voltage on X. It's Voltage underscore cloud, and the company's on LinkedIn as well. But those would be the best places to connect.
Great. Sounds like you're doing amazing work, and it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Hey, you as well, Michael.